Okay, welcome. Thanks for press and play. We're here. It's Christina and Peter. And we're here with Grace and John again. We want to share these beautiful people, our mentors and teachers and friends. We want to share them with the world and also share the Course in Miracles, but also these guys are such great translators, because the Course is kind of, for those of us that, I was just born when the Course was coming out. So it's kind of like old-fashioned language to me sometimes when I'm reading it. And so you guys really help me kind of pick it apart and understand it. So that's one of the reasons.
Thank you. I think it's only in terms of how we're students too, and this is how it comes through us. So
and John's been reading it and working with it for so long. He has such a thorough understanding. That's so valuable. So just one of the many reasons
a course nerd. Because I'm not an
so
IT.
Grateful that you are.
You can be nerds in different areas of life.
Absolutely. So we're going to nerd out a little bit on the Course in Miracles today and talk about, just start at the beginning. What is it? What does it say? And then if we have time, we'll get to kind of how it came into the world. And there's a really interesting story about that. So we're just going to let Grace and John take it away.
I'll start. What it is, it's a book, like 1,300 pages book. That's it. That's the one. It has evolved since it came into being.
I got it at half. Oh no, I was going to say I got it at Half Price Books, but I didn't. It's hard to find at Half Price Books.
Yeah, you can get it at Half Price Books, right? It is a book. But for those of us who actually got into it, and we found that it has become a path for us. So it's a book, but it's not just something that you read and you set aside. It's something that you go back to daily. It has Christian themes in it that those of us in the Western world recognize. It has Eastern mysticism in it, and it's got psychology in it. It has universal things that is in all spiritual paths. Most people who are on a spiritual path could pick this up and find something that they know to be their truth. It's in 3 sections. The first section is a text, 622 pages. The next one is a 478-page workbook for students, and the other is a 100 or so page manual for teachers. It's a step-by-step mind training course. The step-by-step theoretical and practical levels and application of theory is in the, theoretical and practical it's combined. The text itself gives you a theoretical and theological and conceptual basis for all of the ideas.
So I wanted to slow you down a little bit, because this is a lot, right? Everything you've said so far. We got a text. How many pages did you say? It's like
622 approximately.
Yeah, and then a whole bunch of pages of workbook lessons, right? So, and you just started talking about the text. So let's just like pick apart the text and tell people a little bit about what that's about, and also remember to encourage people to find a study group because this text is so dense, right?
It's difficult to understand. It's theoretical, it's conceptual, it's got a lot of theology in it, and as you would imagine, it's relatively abstract. It does have concrete stuff in it, but it's the most difficult part for most people to understand readily. John can't sit down and read it himself and understand and comprehend. I picked it up 35 years ago when somebody gave me their book because they couldn't understand it. And like a good student, I started at chapter 1, page 1, and it very quickly just went over my head. I decided, okay, I'm not ready for this.
Same for me.
John was ready for it. Yeah, he was ready for it. He could sit down and do that. I find that having the study group is extremely important for me. John began his study group at our church 9 years ago, and it's the only way for me. I am an interactive learner. I sometimes know what I'm thinking when I say it. And in a study
And at
group,
other times,
and in a study group, I can hear what I mean. And I can hear
Yes.
other people. I can hear how they mean. I can see their vision of it or their facet of understanding of it. And it's remarkable in that there are so many different levels of understanding that are possible in this. You can
Yes.
understand the Course in Miracles at a very egocentric, concrete basis in your own life. And the more you get into it, I've discovered I'm able to see that, oh, it's not just egocentric and at this low level, but there's higher and higher levels. Some of the Course itself says you can understand this at this level, but we hope you'll get up to this level of understanding as well.
Yes, I'm seeing like a ladder. So it's a path, but to me, it's like a ladder of helping us raise our consciousness. You know, and it does take, there's layers to that process, right?
Yeah.
So you're always spiraling back to the same concept and at a deeper level each time.
Yes, spiraling back is a good way to say it. Why don't you read some of the topics, chapter topics too?
Yeah, so the meaning of miracles is the first chapter, right? Let's just get
and it lists
talking about when we talk about A Course in Miracles, right? Like what and the word and I'll just say for everybody, it's different than what my concept of a miracle was growing up in the church and just living in the world, and the use of that word. The word means something more than what you know we normally think of the word for miracles. So,
and that section of the book lists the 50 miracle principles. So it starts out giving you basis for what miracles are. This is A Course in Miracles, so it starts out giving you what is a miracle.
Right. What is it? And I will say, just to echo your sentiment, that when I got the book because of John's study group. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the study group. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to be a good girl and start reading chapter and verse, and I started reading and I'm like, I put it down. I'm like, thank goodness there's a class I can go to and go sit and talk to people about this and listen to somebody talk about it. Cause I am that kind of learner too. And I just kind of gave up on the text, and then workbook lessons, of course, help you then to be able to go back and understand the text. So I'll just go back through and give some folks a little sampling. Illusions of the Ego is chapter 4. Healing and Wholeness, the Lessons of Love, the Journey Back, the Idols of Sickness, God or the Ego, the Guiltless World. So there are a lot more. The Attainment of Peace, chapter 19. Here we go. The Attainment of Peace. We're getting there, right?
And every chapter has multiple sections and, of course, numerous paragraphs. It's written very much like a book with chapters and sections and so forth. A textbook. It is a textbook. It is a curriculum. The second, go ahead.
Well, it's called A Course.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
The framework is a course.
And it really is meant to train your mind to think in radically different ways from what you think now. The text of the workbook is more practical, more concrete maybe than the text is. But it starts out with radically amazing different kinds of ideas. It says that you don't have to believe these ideas. You may even resist these ideas. That doesn't matter. Do them anyway, because it's in the doing and the experiencing of them that you will actually learn and come about. And here's the first lesson that you run into. Nothing I see means anything. We certainly haven't been taught that.
Right.
Nothing I say means anything. And it's like you walk away with, what are you trying to tell me here? I don't understand this. Well, the second day, you run into a little bit more of the meaning. I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. Oh, well, I can begin to understand. This computer has a very different meaning for me from what this computer has for my son, who is one of those technical nerds. Very different meaning. We give the meaning to absolutely everything we see.
Oh my goodness. Can I just use an example? Because just this morning, I was having a moment with my computer And I thought of you and all of your
Yes, too.
frustrations with your computer, and just our relationship to our computer is an opportunity, right, for healing. And
Yes.
all the meaning that you're giving to what's happening with the computer or what's not happening with the computer or what won't work or what, like that was all my work, right, to deal with all these bad feelings I'm feeling, and when it's a computer, we can't blame, well, we still try to blame the computer, I guess, but like when it's a person, we can put way more blame on that, right? But when it's an inanimate object, we got to take responsibility, right?
Yeah. You can't say that computer made me mad.
You don't have to take her. That's you don't have
Did
to.
you use bad words?
That's right.
Computer
It's the
messes up.
slow computer. It's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs.
The internet connection.
And Course in Miracles knows that that's how we're prone. And number 5 says, I'm never upset for the reason I think. It begins to get into it immediately to let you know that not only do you not see anything, it doesn't mean anything. Everything that happens to you, everything that you feel, you've given it all the meaning that you. So it just begins immediately with radically different ideas for how it is teaching you that the world is or isn't.
And practices. It's not just ideas, it's practices so we bring it from, and this is the theme that I think humans all need to be working on, is getting out of our headspace and getting into our bodies, getting more present in the moment. And when you go through these workbook lessons and you work with these ideas and you wrestle with these ideas and you bring them into your being and you repeat them, it really does transform your physical experience of the world.
Yeah. It teaches you the first portion of the book tells you that it's going to help you strip away what you think you know. And then it begins to build back up. And the way, it really is a mind training course. And the way they ask you to do it is, for instance, you have a main idea. Every hour on the hour, take this main idea and apply what you see. Like, perhaps, I don't know if the first one said every hour on the hour, say, I see nothing that means anything. You're instructed to tell yourself, this glass means nothing. I see this stapler. It means nothing. I see that picture. It means nothing. Every hour on the hour, you're to remind yourself of what you're trying to learn. And if you do it, you learn a lot fast.
Yes.
The lessons all have exercises.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The lessons all have exercises. So each lesson has a practice to do daily.
And that's what I like about the course, is that it changes. It's not the same practice every day.
Right.
And for me, that's important. I can't do the same thing. I have to change it up. But it also, there's that changeability part of it, but there's also the very strict rule that it applies to everything. You don't get to pick what it applies to,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the, hold my feet to the fire part of it that is helpful, that really does like force you to squeegee that third eye and see it in a different way.
What were you going to say?
Oh, you already said that the guidance of how to do it changes from day to day. It's not all the same, but it does ask us to really be involved with it. And so the lessons are personal and at times visceral. And I really think, as it says in the beginning of the lessons, it's really the only way to assimilate the course. I mean, it's a gift that was added right after the text to help us actually assimilate it. I think there'd be very few people who would ever be able to assimilate it without the actual practice. And so, the workbook is a practice.
I'd venture to say 0 people can assimilate it without doing the lessons, at some.
Well, because the lessons make it personal. I mean, it really, if you're sitting here on October 11th and you're working with a lesson, the lesson I worked with today was the name of God is my inheritance. So the whole thing about naming and how we use language. And so, I'm working on that personally today. That won't be a lesson tomorrow unless I stay with it. Anyway, I'll stop.
Have we said that there are 365 lessons?
No, I was about to say that there are 365 lessons, which is one for every day. Now you can take them one. You can take them one a day if you choose, but it emphasizes that you don't have to just plow through it. That's not the purpose of this. If there's a particular lesson that resonates with you and you feel that you need to stay with it for more than one day. Do it as it says you're to do it, but stay with it. We knew one lady who stayed with one lesson for like
3 months.
3 months. She stayed with the same and when she finished it, she had it down. It does say you're not supposed to take, the only caveat is don't take more than one lesson in a day.
I don't see how anybody could do that anyway.
You wouldn't be doing it. You really wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to sustain that.
The lessons go from very wordy in the first third, 2 or 3 pages sometimes, 1 page definitely, and 2 or 3 pages sometimes for each lesson so that you grasp the idea fully. And then it gets less and less and less. The words get less and less as the ideas are more experiential and abstract. And at the very end, the section is introduced and said, words will be unimportant to us now, because the experience is what will be more important, and lifting ourselves out of the concrete into the more abstract and more spiritual is important.
That progression, right, that we were talking about.
Yeah. The third section is called the Manual for Teachers. And
before we go to the Manual for Teachers, I just want to say to anyone that what usually happens is the course kind of comes up in your experience and most of us say, okay, yeah, interesting, but not right now. Right. And so if the course is coming up in your experience, and it has been, and it's here again, you've pressed play on this video, I really want to recommend that people start with the workbook, because the text is so challenging. And then while you're working with the workbook lessons, you can look for a group, or, whether you don't have to go to a class, you can do an online study group and, just find some other people to talk to about their experience. So, even though the text comes first in the book, it's not what, when I looked at it, I thought, oh, I guess I need to read all this and then start doing the workbook lessons or something like that. That's kind of what I assumed. Right. And, although I was glad that I was going to go to class and get to hear, from some people about like, how do you even do this? But if you're alone and you just got the book, don't think that you have to do it any certain way, really. Starting with the workbook, I think, is a really great way to start. And then that kind of opens you up to maybe even meeting new people that, are interested in the same thing. And you end up finding, because a lot of people feel really isolated with not having anybody to talk to about some of this, spiritual stuff. So I just want to encourage people to start with the workbook.
Right. And just to say, the workbook is not separate and distinct from the text. It interweaves. Many of John's lessons on Monday night will take part of the workbook and part of the text, or 2 or 3 bits of the workbook and 2 or 3 bits of the text, and interweave them. The ideas supplement one another. So you have the text, which is the theoretical. You have the workbook, which is the daily doing in your life practice. And the third part is a manual for teachers. It explains all about how we are teachers and we are students. You're a teacher and you're a student. You two are teachers and you two are students. It has let's see, in the manual, it also has a clarification of terms. There are vocabulary I discovered after a year or two in the Course in Miracles. The vocabulary is really tricky because Course in Miracles uses words that I understand: love, healing. But my definition of love, my definition of healing, my definition of peace is way smaller than what the Course in Miracles definitions of those words are. It's as if the layers of meaning in the whole book are, meaning in all of Course in Miracles is layered. Every vocabulary word that's a big word like that also has layers of meaning. So it has the Manual for Teachers has the what I just said. The course itself was written in 7 years, and then there was a period of 4 years when it was typed up and distributed and things mulled in the universe. And then Helen came back and there 2 other things were produced called, one was a ladder of prayer,
Song of Prayer,
and the other was psychology and what is it?
Purpose and Practice.
Psychotherapy, purpose, practice, and principles. And those were reproduced later. The newer books, I have a book that doesn't have those 2 things in it, but the newer books, the newer blue books, include those sorts of things. Then
the one you have has the supplement.
Are you done talking about clarification of terms?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because, well, I just feel like that's a whole video that we need to make about some of these different.
There's 6 terms that it uses there, and that would be very interesting. And then if you look at the front of your book, I think you have the one that next it'll say there's supplements, doesn't it? On the very front.
Yes,
on the cover.
yes. I think I have
everything
that you can have in my book.
Song of Prayer and Psychology.
Yes.
And those were added a couple years after the basic course was received. They're both little booklets, about 25 pages each, but they're really loaded, 25 pages.
Yes, beautiful. The Song of Prayer. I mean, well, the whole course is just like this beautiful work of literature, in some way. Just, poetry, really. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
the language and the way it flows and everything.
Very metaphorical part of it. Yeah. So I don't want to leave that's what the main book is. And then later on, the organizations that were involved in actually publishing the book brought out something called the text, and I'll explain that when we talk about how the thing came. And now then we have something called the complete edition, because I'll explain that whenever we talk about how it came as well. But there are 2 other books that are available that add to the meaning of the Course in Miracles.
There is more material than you find in the blue book.
Okay.
About 50,000 words were edited out, and so there's been an effort to put them back on different subjects. And so anyway, that's with the text. And then
what do they call that? On the movie, the outtakes.
Yeah,
it's the outtakes from the course that they took out because maybe they thought it was repetitive, or maybe they thought, who knows why they took it out, right?
The cuts.
Yeah, the cut.
One of the final things in the workbook says this course is a beginning, not an end. No more specific lessons are assigned, but there's no more need of them. Henceforth, hear but the voice for God. He will direct your efforts, telling you exactly what to do, how to direct your mind, and when to come to Him in silence and asking for His sure direction and His certain word. Direction. We are taught to train our mind, and we are given explicit directions for how to do it. That's what the course is all about, or at least that's how it's put together.
Right. So just because you just started quoting the course and used the he, the masculine pronoun, can we just talk about that for a minute? Because I know a lot of people in my generation are going to be put off by that just to begin with, right? Like, God's not a man. The Son of God, we talk about the Son of God in the course, but that doesn't mean just Jesus, right? And so it means all of God's creation, which does include not just boys. Right. So I just want to hear y'all talk about just that aspect of it. And, and I overlook it. I just, I understand God as not a masculine or feminine, that there is both masculine and feminine in the Spirit of God. So, I just kind of overlook that whole patriarchal language.
You want to talk about that now?
Let's just.
It says that it's Christian in form. I think it is people who've been with it, particularly women, I think once you're with it, you realize it has nothing to do with male superiority. Honeydew, I'll do whatever you want to do. It's simply not there. It does use a framework. It came out of the United States that a lot of people would be familiar with. The idea of gender inequality, subservience is simply not there. So I think it uses a language that people can understand, and if you open to it at all, you will see that it has nothing to do with what maybe that resistance might be. But it uses a form of language that people are familiar with. And I realize it has been a stopper sometimes. And sometimes the guidance is if you really need to it, then put the feminine in. It doesn't do what some other teachings do, which is helpful to talk about, say Mother, Father, God, because I think it's just beyond that.
Yeah.
And so it's okay if where you are, it meets us where if you want to use the feminine, use the feminine, and it doesn't do, Mother, Father, God, which tries to capture something, because it really is beyond that. So if that's helpful at all, I think it uses language that a lot of people are familiar with.
And we talked, I can't remember now what we've talked about, but the course came through in the late 60s, early 70s, and that was when, and through folks who were in academia who used the masculine to mean the universal, that was just the language they used. So, to me, that's how I look at it in terms of, it was the time that it came through and the language of the people through whom it came. They were at Columbia University, and that was the masculine pronoun was what you used just to mean everyone, and
it just occurs to me too that in using the term father, it doesn't designate man, it designates a relationship. We have a relationship with God, and father is probably one of the best ways here in this ego world that we can kind of begin to conceive of what that relationship is like. The Son of God, again, it's a relationship. It doesn't mean that it's a masculine. It means that we have a relationship with God. We are God's children. We're the Son of God. So they just, it expresses a relationship, but within a masculine, and it retains the masculine throughout, rather than have to say he and she and so forth.
And
the person needs to, you could use, mother, daughter.
Yes, and sometimes
I think that'll drop away.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes if I'm translating like the prayer, I'm here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent love that sent me. You can put different words in there instead of him that sent me, that kind of have a neutral, there's lots of ways to kind of, get around that. But one thing that I like to hear you talk about, John, is how words are just pointers to concepts, right? And so sometimes we get hung up on the word, we get hung up on the word instead of really, I think that applies here too.
The word is not the thing. I'm holding this up. It is a glass. Okay, and we make some scratches on paper that look like a G, an L, an A, and an S, and an S. And that's a symbol, isn't it? It's a symbol. And so the symbol is not the thing. So I can make some scratches on paper or some strokes on a keyboard and write GLASS. That's not it. I can also speak and say glass. Those are simply pointers, because now I'm going to take a drink. Now I'm experiencing this thing that we've labeled with some scratches on paper or a sound out of my mouth, glass. I think there's a Buddhist idea of the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. But if you're out at night and where's the moon? Well, it's over there. That would be helpful. Unless it's actually over there, that would not be helpful. And that would be the same thing with the words we use. Sometimes the words point to truth. Sometimes they point the other way. I mean, if the moon is up ahead of me to the right and someone says it's over to the left, that's misguidance. So I think, just semantics, we are using symbols. And So we just need to be aware that the symbol points to something, but is not that. You come to a red thing on the street with some words go S-T-O-P, and it's red. Well, the essence of that is stop your car. It's not this metal sign on the corner with some scratching on it painted red. Does that make sense? I mean,
yes,
it's
absolutely.
guiding us to a behavior.
And I might add, you give everything the meaning that it has. This thing contains water right now, and it's for drinking, and we know what that means. But within a different context, it would be part of a musical instrument. You give the meaning, you give meaning to whatever it is that you see.
Or if I'm irritated with someone, I can fling the water at them. If I'm really irritated,
let's brainstorm lots of different ways we can.
Well, if you had a bad morning with your computer, and you might not want to do it, but you could throw the water on the computer. So there's different uses.
Right. And right. And so, and think about all the different emotional responses from just all those different meanings of that glass or that water or that, like, it's so interesting. So what you were just saying was kind of had a light bulb for me about that's obviously the reason that the course is more wordy in the beginning to point us to this experiential thing that we move to toward the end, because it really isn't about the words. It's about the experience. And as an unschooler, who values experiential learning and understands really that that's the only kind of learning that, children don't learn what we say, right? They learn what they see, what they experience, so I so appreciate the fact that the course takes that approach, because church doesn't take that approach. Church is like, we're going to tell you all the rules, and we're going to tell you all the things you need to do, and we're going to tell you all the do's and don'ts. It's all about the words, right? And saying the right words and doing the right things. And, and this is just, it's the unschooling for me, the unschooling way, right? To understand God, to even understand what is a relationship with the Holy Spirit. Like, I didn't understand that in all my years in church, right? Until, I started changing my belief system about, what does it even mean to have a relationship with something you can't see?
When I first started in the course, with the text especially, it just made me irritated because I need examples. I need pictures. I need stories. I need graphs. Tell me what this means. Give me some examples so that I'll know. And about 2 years ago, I realized, if the course gave an example, what level would that example be on? And if it gave an example on this level of understanding, then it would block out all these other levels of understanding. If it gave an example on this level of understanding, everybody underneath who couldn't understand, who wasn't at that point yet, wouldn't be able to understand it still. So it's open-ended without very many examples or illustrations, so that as you come to it, you can see your own examples.
Yeah, and also so you can apply them to every single thing that happens, right? There's no exceptions. Sorry, John.
I wanted to just get back a little bit to how the course goes from lots of words to few words. And I think this is where it probably joins with Eastern thought and mysticism. The course is very clear that human language is not our natural state, whether that be English, French, Arabic, Mandarin. It's kind of part of us trying to pick the universe apart and label things and do it. But it says, okay, since you're here, there's a helpful way to use language and an unhelpful. Kind of like it's nice if somebody points to where the moon is and not in the other direction. So there is a way to use language, but that language is really limited. And the course is trying to move us ultimately beyond that, which has nothing to do with English, French, Arabic, Mandarin. And I think that's where it meets with some of the more mystical traditions. We're trying to get beyond words. Well, yes, we are. but the Course also says you are a wordy group of people, so why don't we use helpful words? I'll help you point to the moon, and then eventually we'll take the
You
finger
can
down.
experience it. Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So it really is trying to move us into that nonverbal state.
Experience.
Yeah, as you were saying, saying.
I don't know. I felt like he had something to say, but he's the non-wordy one of the least wordy one, probably, of all of us,
We
right?
want to hear from Peter right now.
Well, I'm just thinking about.
No,
I'm just thinking about how, he has been such a teacher for me of, the times when we just don't need to use the words. We just need to, get into the experience of something. Right. So I don't know. That just made me think that maybe you had something to say, but maybe not.
No, I'm just into the experience of everything right now. So.
Okay.
Love it.
So we could just sit here and stare at each other.
At Peter.
Now, I don't know how much more you would like to do today. If I talk about, what it says, that might be a bit lengthy. I don't know how long we've been. Half an hour, maybe. So I'm just leaving it to you. Is this a place to stop for today, or do you want to go more in terms of what it says?
Why don't we talk a little bit more about the origins of the?
Well, that's the third.
Is that a different video?
Yeah. Well, it's after this next section.
What's the next?
You weren't listening. When
I was listening, but I thought that was the next section.
It's the third section we're going to do because we're going to talk about what it says, what the Course says, which is, we've just been talking about. We started off with what it is. So Grace just went over kind of, the book and the format and how it's all, all the different sections and all the different. And then we just kind of veered off a little bit because she quoted, that quote that had used the masculine pronoun. So I just wanted to address that just in the beginning, because I think it is for, people my generation and younger, it can be, something, make them feel some kind of way, make us feel some kind of way. Right. I mean, I went to a liberal college where we, got all upset about pronouns for a little while, and tried to figure out what are the, this was in the 90s, right? Early 90s. And there was a big debate about what pronouns to use and which ones were respectful and which ones were, so it's something that a lot of people pay attention to. And so I just wanted to mention it.
Okay. Now, what does it say?
What does the Course say?
Yeah.
I don't know. John might need a break.
No, I'm fine. I just wonder what you want to do today. If this is enough, it's enough. I can also start talking about what it says. I mean, we've been working on that anyway, but the preface has those three parts: how it came, what it is, and what it says. So,
and I think that's a good format to introduce
what it is.
And what did you just say, Christina?
I said I think that's a good format to introduce it to people.
Okay.
To follow that preface.
We can snip all this bit out.
Yes, we will snip all this bit out.
Maybe we should do a conclusion.
Of what it is. Yeah, let's do thank you, Grace.
So we're going to conclude and then go back to the other one next time we gather about what it says.
Yeah, or we can do some more today. It's up to y'all. I don't know. Do you have to go?
No, not just yet.
Okay. So we've been talking about what is the Course in Miracles. It's a curriculum. It's a mind training course. It is composed in one book of 3 different sections: the theoretical text, the practical workbook that has a lesson for every day, and then a manual for teachers that sort of is a supplemental explanation of what you find in the rest of it. It uses very different language from what we're used to. It goes from theoretical to, the workbook goes from wordy and very practical to almost no words and very experiential and spiritual. It is, I'm not sure what else to say. Anybody else want to give a concluding bit for what it is?
Well, it's a path, as we say. I mean, it's a large book. Actually, the newer editions are about 1,300 pages when you add the Song of Prayer and the psychology part. But just kind of like with AA, the big book, it's a big blue book, but it's a way to live. And I say that's an analogy I would use. It is a large blue book, but it's also the intent is that it be a way, a path.
It is a path, and it is one path. We said that in our last video, that it is a Course in Miracles. It doesn't claim to be the path or anyone. There's no one right way to live. Thank goodness.
And as profound as it is very humble in that way. So this is one way that people will be able to find their internal, eternal teacher. There are many others. I mean, that's almost an exact quote.
One way to find your internal, eternal teacher. That is such a perfect way to describe it. And I think that's a great way to end our video. So you guys go find your copy of A Course in Miracles. You can also get I have a digital copy that's kind of nice because I can type in, like if I'm thinking of a quote that I can't really remember and John's not replying to my email about where's that quote in the course, I can type it into my Kindle version or whatever it is and find, sometimes several passages. Of course, if you type in the word forgiveness, that's going to be not a good enough search term.
What does the course say about forgiveness?
So that's going to be our next video. So yeah, that's a good segue. Our next video is going to be about what does the course say, and we're going to give as brief a synopsis as we can on kind of the general teachings of the course, and then we'll just keep on making videos and keep on unpacking this really layered path that is so helpful in so many different ways. And I just want to end by saying, because I thought of this a minute ago, if you're the kind of person that really resists, like, do a workbook lesson every day, it's okay to get the book and then just open up to a text. Here we go. The forgiveness of illusions. I'm going to read about, this paragraph today because Spirit led me to this page, and that, maybe that's the paragraph that I needed to digest first in this entire book. Who knows? You can just kind of peruse it and, digest it in your own way. But I do definitely recommend talking with other people that have been working with it a little bit longer, because it is, it's different than a lot of the kind of spiritual teachings that I've ever encountered.
Okay.
If you're looking for a group, Monday night, 6:30 at Unity on Greenville in Dallas, Texas.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended. And one of these days, we're going to get Grace and John onto a online study group, maybe. I don't know. We're gonna see about maybe doing that for those folks that have a hard time finding a study group. And I've heard that people have a hard time finding a good study group where the teacher isn't, telling you what the course says, like what to believe about the course. John is very good about, when people ask questions, his answer is, well, let's look at chapter da-da-da-da-da-da-da. He lets the course answer the questions usually, and everybody can kind of talk about what it means to them, right? And help answer the questions. But
either that or how would you answer that question? Anybody want to respond to that person? We get a lot of interaction, which is wonderful. Spirit speaks through us all in those groups.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you all are offering this opportunity to us and to you to spread the good news.
Amen.
That's right. All right. So we'll say goodbye to everybody watching the video. We'll see y'all next time with what the course says.
All right. Bye-bye.
Right.